Do you get to the 40th time of marking the same multiple choice question in a homework or a test and think there must be a more efficient and automated way to mark this? Well, in today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to use Google Forms to create quick quizzes and homework checks that practically mark themselves and therefore save you hours and give you instant visual data to help guide your teaching. Hey there, teachers. Welcome to Miss Estruch Teach Tell, the podcast where every week I dive into all the tips and tricks that make teaching life so much easier. Whether you're a veteran educator, an early career teacher learning the ropes, or balancing the classroom with being a busy parent, this will help you streamline your workload and bring a bit more balance to your life. You bring the coffee and I'll bring the teach and tell. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Miss Estruch Teach and Tell, the podcast designed to help busy, overwhelmed teachers streamline their workload and reclaim their evenings. I'm your host, Miss Estruch, or Katie, and each week I share practical strategies that save you time and help you focus on what truly matters, teaching effectively while still having a life outside of school. And I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a quick 5-star reviews if you do regularly listen and find these helpful, because it really helps more teachers discover the podcast and hopefully makes their workload just that little bit lighter as well. So let's talk about Google Forms. I think this is one of the most underrated tools for teachers when it comes to saving time on assessments, quizzes, and homework, and it's completely free. The beauty of Google Forms is that it can take that heavy lifting of marking questions that don't require professional judgment. And if you've got a set of multiple choice questions or matching answers or short one-word answers, things like name the organelle where aerobic respiration takes place, you can set those up to be auto-marked. The second a student hits submits, it marks it for you, and it even gives them a score straight away if you choose for it to be automatically marked instantly and to give them that score straight away. But later we'll come back to that point. But what this means is less time staying up, marking, scribbling ticks and crosses on a pile of books for things that are right or wrong, and you're not having to read, decipher, and add that professional judgment to the answer. Now, it doesn't have to be just auto-marked on Google Forms, which is why I really like it, because you have this variety of uses. If you want to check a student's explanation or their ability to write in more detail, you can also add short and longer answers too. And those are the ones that you will then need to go into Google Forms and read it and add actual marks and comments. But that is the beauty of it. You can combine the two. You can let Google Forms handle the quick recall checks, and then you just focus on the longer answer questions that need your professional judgment. And it's a really nice balance between saving you time and still giving you that meaningful teacher feedback. And this is exactly what exam boards do with the actual exams. Multiple choice questions are auto-marked by a computer, and single word answers are often marked by students at university. And then the trained professional examiners are using the mark scheme and their professional judgment to apply that mark scheme to all of the other questions. Now, not only do I love Google Forms because it saves time on those short answer questions and multiple choice marking, but as a data lover, I love it for being able to analyze the responses as well. So here is the other reason why it's so useful: the feedback. As soon as a student submits their answers, you get a visual breakdown, or you can have it as an Excel document if you prefer just seeing the numbers as a table, but you can get it numbers in a table in Excel, or you can have it as bar graphs that show you how many students got each question right, or pie charts showing the spread of answers for a particular question. And I used to spend ages going through exercise books or tests after I'd marked them to try and work out which questions had tripped everyone up. So was there a common question students just hadn't done very well on, or I might have marked it down, made a note as I went. But the key thing was I was mainly either spending ages to accurately record this down, or I was spending less time and just basing it on my perception, which might not have been accurate because my memory and perception could have been influenced by which series of answers I just marked, and I think that those 5 represent the whole pile. So that sort of thing. But now if you do it on Google Forms, you can then see an accurate data representation. So you might look and think, I can see that 70% of the class thought glucose is made in respiration, not used. Right, so that's what I'm going to go back and tackle as the starter in my next lesson, because clearly there's been a massive misconception around this. And you can even actually break it down and see which students have thought certain things or got the wrong answer. So you might know if you're going to do a group work, target certain students in one group so you can really focus on one concept with them. So that data is absolute gold, because it doesn't just help you with potentially the next lesson or the lesson you're reviewing the test. It also helps with the long-term planning and year after year. If you're seeing students consistently struggling with, let's say, enzyme inhibition, you know that's a topic you might need to consider reteaching in a different way or spending more time on it, because year on year your students are struggling with that concept. So that's why I love Google Forms, but let me walk you through it now step by step, how you can really easily set this up. And if you are listening now on, I don't know, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you might be listening on, you might prefer to swap over to the YouTube version of this episode now, because in the actual video you're going to get a screen recording going through everything I'm saying so you can visually see how to set it up. You can even have it playing, pause, you do it, pause, carry on, and so on. But let's get into it then. First of all, you need to open Google Forms, and if you're in Google Drive, you just click New, then More, then Google Forms. But if you're not in Google Drive, you can literally just Google Forms and it comes up. And you start with a blank form and you give it a title. So for example, Year 12 Biology Transport Across Membranes Quiz. Next, you click the settings cog at the top and switch on Make This a Quiz. This is the magic bit. You can choose whether the marks are released to the students straight away as soon as they've submitted it, which is perfect if it's all multiple choice, so it doesn't need you to go in and mark it, or if you want students to gain an idea of how they're doing immediately. So it might be a quick quiz for homework you've set after the lesson so they can do it, it's automatically marked, and they get instant feedback of what they have and haven't understood so they know what to prepare before the next lesson. Or you can set it that they don't get their marks until later. And that's perfect if you're planning to mark some of the longer answer questions yourself, so you don't want them to get half of the marks already, you want to wait until they can get a full score. Or if you don't want the students to see the answers so that everyone has to complete it before the answers are shared. Okay, next step then is adding your questions, and multiple choice is the default that it offers you. So you would type in your question and your answer options. You would click answer key, select the right answer and give it a mark value. So it might be if they've said this, they get 1 mark. You can even add feedback that the students will then see as soon as they've submitted their answer to that individual question. And I think that is really great if you want to link a particular YouTube video or revision guide page so that they can have a look at that if they've not understood the question or found it hard. Or I think it's really useful as well if it's a particular question that you know there are misconceptions around. You could give them that multiple choice question, they submit their answer, they get some feedback straight away saying this is a really common misconception with this question, and just make them aware of it to see did they think they might have fallen into that common error. Now for the short answer questions like what's the monomer of proteins, you can then add all of the acceptable spellings or variations into the answer key so it can still be automatically marked. So for example, for what is the monomer of proteins, you could accept amino acid or amino acids. So it's not going to accidentally mark it wrong because it's the plural versus not. And if there's any acceptable, incorrect versions of the spelling that you know about from the mark scheme, you could put those in. Or if you just think it's a typo, you can put in all of the options, and any of those options that are typed will get the mark. For longer responses, this is when you need to switch the question type to paragraph. You can still set a mark value, but leave it blank. Then go back and you add the scores manually after they've submitted. So the student completes the whole quiz. Some of them are automatically marked if it's multiple choice or the short answers where you put in the accepted answers. And then you enter the form and you would mark the longer answer questions and manually add what mark they got. You can also drop in in images. So if you're teaching, let's say, photosynthesis, you can insert a diagram of the chloroplast with a part labeled A and a part labeled B, and you ask them to say what is, or name structure A, name structure B. Or if you're checking practical skills, you can even ask them during the practical lessons to take photos of their results or photos of certain things they've set up and get them to upload that on the Google form, so you can then check, well, let's see what their results were, or let's see how they set it up. Because in the practical, if you've got a class of 30, it's very hard to go around and check every single student at every single step. So this offers another way to verify skills in the lesson that maybe you weren't able to see. So once your quiz is then written and complete, you click the purple send button and you then get a link. You share that link with your class. Or if you are already using Google Classrooms, you can attach it straight to an assignment. Once the class has then started submitting the responses, you can actually see the data on the responses tab. You get a summary page that shows the average scores, pie charts, multiple choice answers, and also a quick view of which questions were the most commonly missed. Now that summary page is gold dust for planning, but also for your feedback lesson post-test. You can also link your form to a Google Sheet, which I do every time, because you then get for every question and every student a breakdown of their score. And I love doing this because it means you can then quickly filter and see, for example, who always mixed up meiosis with mitosis, or who didn't quite get the maths questions. So you can filter then, you can see, well, these I know were all the maths questions. Was there a common reoccurrence of students that were struggling with that skill? So it's great for you to be able to see patterns in students that are finding particular questions hard, or as an overview of the class, were there common areas that people were losing more marks, to inform your future teaching of that class, but also replanning that lesson for next year. Or as I said, brilliant for your feedback lesson, where it might be reviewing the test, or you can use the information for parents' evening. And on top of all of that, it's instant feedback. Doing that manually would take me hours, but the time you would have spent marking can instead go into planning a really effective feedback lesson using all of that data, which again would have taken hours to assimilate and to work out. So you are getting quicker marking, more sophisticated data quicker, and therefore you have got more time to use for something else, such as, like I said, planning an effective feedback lesson, or using that information to put on a report or a parents' evening later. Or it could just be leaving school on time for once. Now, what I would say is there is a downside. And for me, the downside is it is extra work initially, especially if you have already got all of the class tests and homeworks made that you use year on year. So you do have to dedicate time then to create a whole new set of assessments. And potentially one way to try and solve that, as a huge task to do, is talk about in your department, is this something that as a department you could decide to be one of your action plans for the year, and therefore collaboratively you can create a new set of tests on Google Forms. And you could even then use department time, where you could all use 1 hour of department time to create a test each. Depending on how many people there are in the department, you might get quite a lot done then. Or if that is just not an option for you, I know some people are a one-person department, so that's not going to work, you could instead think, I'm not going to aim to get all of this done immediately because it's too much, but I'll try one for the next test, and if I do find it does actually work quite well, when I get to the next test, I will do it then. So you make one as you go, breaking up the task into an hour or two, rather than trying to spend hours replanning everything for the year ahead. But once you have made them, they can then be reused for multiple classes year on year, very easily edited and tweaked, and you have it there ready made. So I think it is worth at least trying. And if it is something that you find does streamline your workload and you love the ability to use that data, it could be worth that investment of time into doing something like that. And I did actually get a request from a school who had been using my AQA PowerPoints. They said they use Google Forms exactly like this, do their assessments, but they said it takes them quite a lot of time to make them. And they did ask me, is it something that I'd ever consider making, like a suite of Google Form assessments for AQA A-level A-level or GCSE. And at the time I was like, yeah, I could do that actually. And then I forgot about it. So if that is something that you think you as a teacher personally or your school might be interested in, then drop it in the comments, because if it is something that is quite popular, then I guess I can take that time element out of it and I can invest the time if it's something that a lot of people are after, and I can make them for you that your school can then use. But that is it for today's episode of Miss Estruch Teach Tell. I hope you're excited to give Google Forms a go and see just how much time it could save you. And don't forget, please subscribe, follow, leave a 5-star review, because it really helps to boost this podcast to more teachers just like you. That is it for this week, and I'll see you next Monday, everyone.